Every human being carries within them a story, one that begins long before birth and evolves until the very last breath. Lifespan development. Psychology is the study of that story, the science of how we change, grow and transform across the entire arc of life. From infancy to old age, our minds, bodies, and emotions are in constant motion. We are never static. Every experience, every relationship, every challenge leaves its imprint on who we become. This field asks the most fundamental questions. Why do we think differently as children? How does identity form during adolescence? What makes adults search for purpose? And how does wisdom emerge in old age? Developmental psychologists like Erik Erikson, Jean Piaget, and Sigmund Freud believe that life unfolds in stages, each with its own psychological tasks and challenges. For instance, Erikson described 8 key stages of psychosocial development, from trust versus mistrust in infancy to integrity versus despair in late adulthood. Each stage shapes how we see ourselves and how we relate to the world. But lifespan psychology doesn't just focus on growth. It also examines decline, regression, and rebirth. It recognizes that change is nonlinear. Sometimes we move forward, sometimes backward. But every moment is part of a larger evolution. At its core, lifespan development teaches us this truth. You are not who you were yesterday, and you are not yet who you will become. Every phase of your life is a chapter, equally vital, equally human. Human development is not just biological, when it's psychological, social, and cultural. Our genes give us potential, but our environment molds the outcome. From a baby's first attachment to a caregiver to the cultural values that define our beliefs, the world is constantly sculpting us. Psychologists identify 3 key domains of development. 1 biological, like physical growth, brain development, puberty, aging. 2 cognitive, how we learn, remember, and think. 3 psychosocial, emotions, identity, relationships, and morality. The interaction between these forces creates what psychologists call the developmental trajectory, a unique, ever-changing pattern that defines each individual life. For example, a child raised in an emotionally supportive home might develop strong self-esteem, while one who grows up in instability may struggle with trust or attachment later in life. And yet we are not prisoners of our past. Lifespan psychology shows that with self-awareness, therapy, and new experiences, people can reshape their internal world at any age. Neuroscience even proves it. Through neuroplasticity, our brains can literally rewire themselves, forming new patterns of thought and behavior. In this sense, human development is not fate. It's a dialogue between nature and nurture, between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. Carl Jung once said, "Life really begins at 40, and up until then, you are just doing research." He was right. The study of lifespan development reveals that growth does not stop at adulthood. In fact, the second half of life may be the most transformative of all. Adulthood brings challenges, responsibility, relationships, purpose, loss. But it also brings opportunity, the chance to integrate all the selves we have been. Jung called this process individuation, becoming whole by reconciling the conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, ambition and acceptance. In old age, development doesn't end. It deepens. Psychologists like Erikson and Peck argued that older adults face the final task, finding meaning in what they've lived. Some find despair, others wisdom. The difference lies in reflection, acceptance, and peace with the self. Lifespan development psychology invites us to see life not as a race, but as a transformation and an unfolding of mind and spirit. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every heartbreak becomes an initiation. Every stage from birth to death has its own purpose. So the real question isn't, when does development stop? It's, who are you still becoming? Human life is not a straight line, it is a cycle. A spiral of becoming, breaking, and beginning again. Lifespan development psychology reminds us that transformation never truly ends. We do not grow once and stay that way. We grow, collapse, and rebuild, and again. Think about the child who becomes an adult, only to rediscover their inner child again decades later. Think about the ambitious young person who defines themselves by success, only to face a midlife crisis that forces them to redefine what success even means. Every ending in life, a breakup, a failure, a loss, is not just an event. It's a developmental moment, a psychological death that makes space for something new to emerge. Psychologists call this process life. Transitions, those periods, when the ground beneath us shifts and we are forced to rebuild our identity. It happens when we move away from home, lose a loved one, become a parent, retire, or even simply question what our life has meant. Each transition tests us. It challenges the stability of who we think we are. And that's exactly why it's sacred, because without disintegration, there is no reintegration. Without breaking, there is no becoming. Carl Jung believed that true transformation occurs only when we confront the unconscious, when the masks we wear are stripped away and we meet the raw, unfiltered truth of who we are. In Jungian terms, these moments are initiations, psychological rites of passage that demand honesty, humility, and courage. From a developmental perspective, these are not failures. They are essential phases of human growth. The loss of meaning you feel at 30, the existential doubt you face at 40, the loneliness that creeps in at 60, all are signs that you are being invited to evolve into a new version of yourself. And here lies the paradox. The more we resist change, the more painful it becomes. The more we embrace it, the more graceful, conscious, and powerful we become. Lifespan psychology doesn't teach you how to avoid change. It teaches you how to live through it. It helps you see that your story is not made of one fixed identity, but of many selves, each born from the ashes of the last. In this sense, life is not a straight path of progress, but a continuous rebirth. Every year, every heartbreak, every victory, every quiet realization, all part of the same magnificent unfolding. The child becomes the adult becomes the seeker becomes the sage, and in the end, the sage becomes the child once more, innocent, humble, awake. To study lifespan development is to witness the art of becoming human and all its chaos and beauty. To live it consciously is to realize that there is no final version of you. There is only the becoming, the evolution, the eternal return. So when you ask, "Who am I?" remember, you are not a finished being. You are the question itself, alive, changing, infinite as you move through life stages, from the innocence of childhood to the awareness of adulthood, and finally, the wisdom of age. And remember this: every version of you was necessary. Every chapter had meaning, and every change, no matter how painful, shaped the consciousness you carry today. Psychology doesn't just explain who we are, it reveals how we become. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden patterns of your own life, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to explore the depths of psychology, philosophy, and the mind's evolution. Like this video if it spoke to your own journey. Head and share your thoughts below. Which stage of life changed you the most? Because understanding your life isn't about resisting change, it's about awakening to it. And the moment you do, you begin to live consciously. And this is where your transformation begins.